We'll get started. So I'm entitled this: Why Your Factory Feels Busy But Output Never Really Improves. I'm going to introduce you to bottlenecks, communication, and breaking work down. There are three. They're the three areas I'm going to cover. They're the three things that I've found work for me really well over the years. So I'm sharing with you stuff effectively from the coalface. Okay, so just out of interest, for those of you who don't know me, why would I have this kind of information and why would I be sharing it? I've been working in manufacturing for about 35 years now, and here's the range of products and companies that I've worked with, everything from bottling and chilled foods right the way through to wind turbines and some fairly complex digital printing machinery, and even including farm machinery and oil and gas. So quite a wide range of different sectors. I'm pretty much agnostic when it comes to which manufacturing sectors I work with. And then what I use to get under the skin of what companies do is what I've called the process cycle. So I start with an inquiry, with an order, and work right the way through, follow it all the way through to when it's dispatched. Manufacturing isn't just this grey box over in the right hand side. It isn't just when a works order hits the shop floor. It's when an order is delivered through from sales process right the way through. So it includes planning, scheduling, purchasing. And I use this in my factory performance reviews and action plans that I come up with for organizations. So that's where a lot of this information's come from. And we'll move through to the next bit. So before we start on the bottlenecks bit, one thing we've got to get over is the fact that how businesses cost work. So most manufacturing businesses have a similar way of costing work. They have a raw material cost, they have a direct labor, they have an overhead, and then they put a margin on. And at the moment, all of those costs are going up, particularly in the UK. All of those costs are going up. Wages are increasing, materials are increasing. So what can you do? You either try and absorb the cost increases, or you pass them on as your own price increases, or you can try and mitigate those costs as they increase. And that's what we'll have a look at. But that model of raw materials, direct labor, overhead, and margin leaves us feeling busy all the time. And the reason for that is this. The product cost, the bit that you put in together, has labor per part. And the direct labor costs are actually fixed time on site. They're weekly wages. So these two things are in tension all the time. You're trying to make things work where one part going down just shifts the cost into another funnel, if you like, another part of the business. So when your product costs, when you're trying to do something with the product costs, like we used to do with Craftsman, all you're doing is shifting the cost into the overhead in reality for most of us, because the direct labor cost doesn't care about the product cost. They're not linked. One will leak into the other and vice versa. So that's a real issue for organizations who don't understand that. So when you're focusing on direct labor costs and direct labor time, when you bring that down, the direct wage stays the same. You're still paying people to be on site for 40 hours a week. You're still paying them the same hourly rate. So the pressure to recover the direct wages, the costs, comes to you to attribute it to products. So you come under even more pressure to keep staff utilized, to keep machinery utilized. So that's where all of that comes from. You feel busy because every time you do an improvement, you're taking away staff utilization. And then you need to be able to utilize staff more often. So you're trying to get more work out for them. So you're trying to keep people busy. You're trying to keep departments busy. When actually what you're trying to really do is get more orders out. That's what you should be doing. So this whole piece the next piece on bottlenecks looks at that. Should we be turning the question from how do I reduce the time to how do I get more orders out? And these are some live examples from organizations I've worked with. So you can get 20, 30, 40% more out of businesses by following some of these simple rules. These are not made up. These are absolutely results 1 year to the next. And the reality is that when these achievements happened, the switch that switched them was sort of 3 to 6 weeks to get them to move into those kind of figures. So a company making 3.2 million pound per month to making 4 million pound a month, it didn't take a full year to try and get to there. It took a period of about six weeks to actually flick the switch once we'd worked out what to do. So these are not, it takes a year. These can be a few weeks. At least one of those on there was under 3 weeks to flick the switch. So there is more to be got out of most of our manufacturing businesses. And here's just an example. If you can do 40% more and you've got a labor cost of 100, and that's the total weekly cost, and your output's 10, your labor cost per unit's 10. If you can improve that by 40%, you make the labor 28% cheaper. You'll get more out. You'll be able to divert time to training, to looking at other improvements, to looking at other work. But you can get this kind of figure out of most manufacturing businesses. So it's getting more out of the business is where I focus on. Okay, so bottlenecks. Let's have a look at them. Okay, I want to ask a question. I want you to try and imagine saving time. Imagine taking 10 minutes out of this afternoon and putting it into next week. It's impossible. You can't do it. The myth that somehow we can save time, I kind of understand at a personal level. So if I want to do something faster, if I do a piece of work this afternoon that finishes at 2 o'clock and it was meant to finish at 2:30, I can do something in that extra half an hour I've got. If I'm in a business and I pass my work on to somebody else, and I then pass my and that somebody else isn't ready for it, it won't move. If I pass work to another department and they're not ready for it, it won't move. So whatever time I've saved hasn't actually materialized. If I'm late, on the other hand, and the department's waiting for me, they're now waiting. They've now lost time. So we can lose time, but we can't really gain it. It's one of these things that we don't talk enough about. So we can lose time, but we can't really gain it unless we do something clever. And I'm just waiting for my slide to change. We work on the bottleneck. If you can imagine your business as a sand timer, the only bit of the sand timer that will improve the throughput is the bit in the middle where the sand passes through. Most of the time, we're trying to improve parts of an order and make that faster. We're not making the business faster. We're not focused on that. We're not looking at that. Whereas actually, if we focus on the bottleneck, we'll make the business faster. And that's what we should be doing, is focusing on the bottlenecks that appear in our businesses. And to give you an example of that as well, if you take, this was an example we had with an organization. It took 9.5 days to get from start to finish. And it was 54 minutes of work. By working on the bottlenecks and removing some of the gaps as well, we got it down to 3 days. So imagine that in your business. Customer will see it, staff will see it. You haven't reduced the cost. All that you have done is improve the time it takes to get from the start to the finish. But everyone will see it. And guess what? The 54 minutes we later improved, and that did have an impact. But I'd almost guarantee if we'd have tried to reduce the 54 minutes, I could have got it down to 30 minutes fairly quickly, but it would still be stuck at 9.5 days. So no one would have perceived an improvement. So if you want to know if you've got a bottleneck, find a queue of work. Find work stuck. It can be physical. It can be in an inbox. It can be sat in a quotation box. It can be sat anywhere in your business in that chain of sort of cycle of work, from the start of a customer coming in with an inquiry through to it being dispatched. You will find a queue of work. The check for it is that the process relying on that bottleneck will be starved at certain points. So the people in there will be looking for pieces of work to do. They'll be looking for stuff to find. They'll be grabbing whatever they can do. And the other thing about every physical bottleneck is it's caused by how we think the business works. And the reality is that's normally by somebody trying to drive efficiency. So every physical bottleneck I've encountered has been driven by the way somebody in the business thinks and the way that they've organized a piece of work or organized a department or organized batching work together, or having make to stock policies. All of those things are all how people think the business should work. A physical bottleneck doesn't appear on its own. And how do we know we might be on the right track? These three gentlemen, Henry Ford in 1927, he's written that a full iron ore was delivered on a Monday morning at 8 a.m. into his factory, and the full car was being delivered at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. Imagine that. Iron ore, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock Monday morning, car out from that iron ore, Tuesday, 5 p.m. No WhatsApp groups, no Slack, no email, no fax machines, no calculators, no ERP systems, no CRM systems, just a complete focus on how quickly you can get raw materials through the factory. Taiichi Ohno worked out that for every one US worker, there were 9 Japanese workers. The US workers weren't doing things massively different, probably. They weren't massively that more productive. They weren't supermen, but they were organized in a different way. And Frank Woolard, who was the guy at MG Motors in the UK, he went in 1923 from 300 units a day to 1,200 units a day. And all three of them would probably agree with the statement above, which Taiichi Ohno talked about. All we are doing is looking at the timeline from the moment the customer gives us an order to the point when we collect the cash. It's the most important thing is find a bottleneck and work on that and get that moving through. There are often hidden ones, but like I say, you'll find a queue of work in front of them. And then after them, you'll find a starvation point where people are struggling for what to do next. They'll be grabbing whatever activity they can do, whatever orders next, whatever piece of work's there to do, because the bottleneck isn't supplying them fast enough. So the next piece is communication. It's probably the most common thing that people will say to me. Communication in here is, and you can fill your expletive in. It's normally followed by the phrase that we're treated like mushrooms in here. The problem is that the vast majority of our communication these days is reactive. It's around problems, it's around issues, it's around instructions. It happens at 8 o'clock, it happens at 9:30, it happens at 11:30, it happens at 1 o'clock. We are constantly onto communication in our businesses without thinking about how that overloads people in the organization. The reality is, what I tend to do is talk to people about having a daily meeting. In that meeting, we talk about safety. So that's keeping people safe. Our businesses change all the time. They change every 8 hours. We bring more materials in, we ship orders out, we have things moving around production floors. So safety is paramount. We have a discussion about safety every morning. Is there anything that's happened, anything that's new, any new training that's come out that we need to be following? So are we keeping our people safe? The next bit is quality. Are we keeping our products safe? There's nothing more frustrating than having something come down a line or come through a factory and you know that it isn't to the quality you need. You're going to have to do it again. So why not nip it in the bud and work through the problems with it? So safety, quality, and then a schedule. Who's doing what? When did they start? When did they finish? Are there any overlaps? Is there anything that we've missed? Is there anything we should be doing? And really, a schedule is really important. A lot of businesses don't have a schedule. They have some form of plan, but a lot don't convert that into a schedule. So a schedule will tell you if you've got the same machine committed to resources at the same time or committed to orders, if you've got particular skills that you need at the same time. The other reason for doing a meeting is that we want to listen to what people say, we'll listen to how they say it, look at them and take in how they're looking. We want to get a sense of how people are feeling. Okay. Part of our role as leaders is to be able to do that, is to be able to sense where people are at and step in and give guidance and give coaching. We also want a relatively simple way of giving positive feedback. It's too easy to miss these days. But it's an easy way of giving positive feedback to people in the business about what's happening, and making sure that that happens in a timely manner instead of doing it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when you're kind of rushing through. It also gives you an opportunity to tell people to wait. I've got a meeting, I've got something come through. It's dropped on my desk at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It needs dealing with, but it isn't urgent. So I know next morning at 8 o'clock, I'm going to be talking to everybody. So I can put that to one side. If people come to me with issues or questions, I can put it to one side and I can turn that meeting into a chance to be able to say, right, we're all together. Let's give the answer, instead of at 3 o'clock suddenly dropping everything and trying to go and find people to give somebody else an answer to something that probably isn't that urgent. So it does allow you to structure your day in a different way. And the final bit that I put on top of a daily meeting is the golden hour. Straight after the meeting, the temptation can be to disappear into your office and go back. The reality is you want to give people an hour of your time, an hour in which you are not committed to any HR meetings, any strategy meetings, any finance meetings, any supplier meetings. You just spend the hour available for the staff on the floor, for the problems that they brought to you in the meeting, for the problems that they've talked to you about, so that you can go and observe things. At the end of a week, if you do these meetings correctly and you give them five minutes, maximum 15 minutes a day, and you commit to the golden hour, you'll have given the shop floor 6 hours, 15 minutes. The rest of your week is available for all the other things. But in that golden hour, you can you can answer questions, you can get things moving, and not in the knowledge that the next 7 hours, people are going to be delivering for you and giving you the right output that you want. So for me, it's kind of it's a no-brainer. The golden hour has to be part of your daily process. And again, this really works with organizations. So find your bottlenecks, put in place your communication and your golden hour. And the final bit, and sorry, the reason for this as well, we have a shop floor these days, and I'm sure it's true of a lot of countries, but in the UK in particular, we have a shop floor which is fragmented in the way that it talks to one another, in the way that it gets its media. So whereas when I started, you might have Radio 1 on the shop floor and a local radio station. So I'm a Scouser, it would have been Radio City. In Manchester, it would have been Piccadilly. In Nottingham, where I did some work, it was Radio Trent. Nowadays, you've got people of all ages listening to, as you can see, Boom Radio. Somebody's listening to Capital, somebody's listening to Radio 2, somebody's on Hits Radio, and somebody's on Radio 1. We don't have shared moments where we talk about what's happening in our wider lives. And therefore, when you come onto a shop floor, there's no communication. People are less likely to talk to their colleagues about things. They're less likely to have shared interests. So your morning meeting is about sort of saying, I don't care about all the noise outside. This is what we're going to sort out for the next 8 hours while we're all together in this factory and on this shift. So, make it work for you. You can't get away from it. Communication is something you're going to have to do. And it's something, if you get right, they will be on your side. And it's quite amazing how many conversations you can have with people who have completely different views because you've made time for them. Okay, the next bit is breaking work down. And this is where traditional sort of lean and process improvement work starts to come into it. Once you've got the work done and you've found your bottleneck and you've started to communicate, you are going to need to do a little bit of work on what people are actually doing, where they're wasting time. And that's what I focus on all the time, wasting time. I don't worry about all the other wastes, because all the other wastes are often a function of wasting time. So this example was one I saw on a shop floor. 82% of what the guy was doing wasn't welding, but his company told me they didn't have enough welders. Now, the reality was that their bottleneck was somewhere else. We sorted the bottleneck, and after we sorted the bottleneck, this started to become more of an issue. And then we went through with Dave what he did, and he'd be waiting for orders to appear. He'd be waiting to be told what was next. The schedule wasn't always clear. He'd be driving off to a room where all the parts were kept for him. And then he'd be having to get a bin of parts out and then sort through them, because the bins were sorted for the guys doing the laser cutting, not for what he needed next as the customer. So he'd be driving off on finding a forklift, driving off on it, picking stuff up out of bins, searching them, moving the bins around, checking he had the right information on the drawings, checking he had the right parts against the drawings. And that was really kind of his day. So once you sorted all that out and removed all those wastes of time, guess what? He could do about three times more welding. And the last bit is, this was looking at a wiring part for a company. So we had a wire. It was complex. It had about 45 individual wires in the center that needed plaiting in a certain way. And when we asked the question, have you tried outsourcing it? The answer was clearly yes, we've tried, and we didn't get any progress with it. When we asked the question about, okay, let's break it down, there's making the wire, which is a complex piece of work and takes a long time, and we don't have any setup for it, versus putting the glands on the ends and the connectors and testing it. The answer we got there was, oh, we never asked that. So we went out, the electrical wire suppliers said, yeah, we can do the wire, we just can't do the ends and the connectors. The cost saving of sending it out was zero. In fact, I think it might have actually been cost negative. It might have cost us a little bit more to send it out than make it internally. But it saved us 8 days internally, because we no longer had anybody making the wire bit. That was all done outside. This was a complex wire. It was quite long. So breaking a job down into individual parts is really important for us. And that's where we're going to get automation. That's where we're going to get changes to businesses. That's where we're going to get robotics. That's where we're going to find work can really move forward, and we can get productivity gains. So for me, it's always been a case of, I'm trying to get the slide to move. It's not about try and improve the work, try and improve the job processes, and then maybe do a bit of communication, and it really fades away, which I see a lot of the time. My 3 steps are: identify the bottleneck and fill the gaps between the work, fix the communication, do it daily with a purpose, and instigate a golden hour to talk to people, and break the work down. Learn to break work down. It's industrial engineering. So that's what I would say is the way to do it. And that's the way that I've done it, and the way that's got me the 20 to 40% more work out. It's luck if you find the one piece of work that will suddenly unlock things, unless you're focused on finding the bottleneck. But fixing the communication these days is a clear winner with people, and then breaking the work down allows you to see where productivity gains come from automation and robotics, and changing who's responsible for what part of a job. All of those things come out. So I've been Mark Greenhouse. I hope you found that interesting. I've not got any questions at the moment that I can see. You can certainly send me some questions after this if you want on email or via LinkedIn. I also do perform factory performance reviews and give them action plans, and I've got a secondary service which is coaching and mentoring for manufacturing leaders, which is something that I've found that we need to give our manufacturing leaders across the UK. I hope you found that useful. If you have, let other people know. I'm sure LinkedIn will record this properly, and other people will be able to see a recording of it. And hopefully it's worked, because, like I say, there is a lag on this, and it's the first time I've used this software. So it might not get a second outing. All right. And thank you for listening.